Well, it's July 25th. It's another hot summer night. If this were 1892, Lizzie would be coming back from a big day at Blake's Point, near Marion, where she had met a bunch of her lady friends for a little summer outing. And also some of the fellows from Fall River arrived on a sailing boat called the Mabel Swift. And I'm sure when she got back to the Pools place, that would have been 20 Madison Street. Mrs. Poole was the mother of Carrie and Augusta Poole Tripp. She must have been tired, and then tomorrow, as you remember, they were all going to rent a carriage and go out to Westport to visit Augusta Tripp at the farm before Lizzie will get on the train and come back to Fall River. I guess it's been, well over 22, maybe even 25 years ago. I went up to Haverhill, Massachusetts to do some work on William Moody. And I took Len Ribello, author of Lizzie Borden, Past and Present, with me. Nobody knows Massachusetts better. And while we were looking through microfilm, these were the days when you had to use that machine, and we ran across some interesting things right on the front page of the Newburyport Daily News. And I guess on Wednesday, July 20th, something rather extraordinary happened at the Cable House, which was one of those little summer resort places right on Salisbury Beach, which is Atlantic Ocean facing. Apparently there had been a poisoning of some type, and out of, I believe it was 13 or 14 people that became ill in various degrees, some severe, 5 perished over the course of the next few days. Now, this was in the paper. It was quite a big story. Lizzie would have seen this in the newspapers as she was at the Pools boarding house and looking at the papers. The coverage begins right away on the 21st. And years ago, I made copies on the copy machine. We see the coverage here on July 23rd. 3 more persons die in intense agony, including a young boy named Leroy Smith. Also passing very quickly and from severe symptoms was a man named Daniel McCarthy. He had come from Ireland 10 years before. The parents had sent him with money to get an education. Well, he was a party fellow and liked the ladies and didn't exactly do everything his parents had hoped he was going to do with the money. In the summer, he got this job at the beach as a hostler. And a hostler would be a man who would look after the horses of anyone who would be staying at the inn. We're going to hear more about Daniel McCarthy later, and a certain lady friend of his named Kate Kennedy. Well, as the days went on, there were a lot of theories about what was going on at the Cable House. Why were people sick? Why were they dropping like flies? Delirium, nausea, stomach upsets, chills, and burning fever. Many doctors were called in. They all had their own thought. One doctor thought it might be cholera morbus, something wrong with the water. And sure enough, on the 25th, this would be today, back in 1892, we get a headline, 2 more are sick, a possible clue to the poisoning. Well, now they're thinking there's something wrong with the water. And the food that had been cooked at dinner on the night of Wednesday the 20th might possibly have been infected with the bacteria The water was brought from the well and put in 2 big barrels back at the kitchen door. And the cook, Mrs. Wing, who had been working at the cable house for many years, that would be her supply of water for the kitchen. And so they explored that, and samples were taken. Guess who's at Harvard Medical School? Yes, Dr. Wood and also Dr. Hill. And of course we know Dr. Wood will show up very soon in the Borden case. Well, after some more investigation, and also William Moody, who will be very much involved in the Borden case shortly, sat in on this case and ordered more investigations into the cause. And the second thing they come up with is that it must be the fish. And here's the headline: 2 Haverhill ladies die from eating bluefish. This is Mrs. Webster and a Mrs. Sanborn, and they die. The cause of their death is a mystery, but it's believed that impure food was the prime cause. And that's the headline about the bluefish. Well, they stick to that one for a while. Now, you can imagine if you were on vacation at Salisbury Beach, there was a stampede away from Salisbury Beach. People were leaving the boarding houses. They didn't want to drink the water, and they certainly didn't want to eat the bluefish. And in the newspapers, you'll see a lot of caution about eating bluefish. You will remember on Tuesday, the 2nd of August, the Bordens had swordfish and were very ill that night. Now we're going to start drawing some little parallels here. So more investigating, lots of people were involved, too many people. They all had their own theory. There was an article in the paper, who was going to solve this mystery? This was big news, by the way. This was huge in the newspapers. The Globe carried it. The Fall River Daily News carried it. All of the major papers. Nothing like this had ever happened before at the seaside. And the food, and of course, the water were blamed. And then as more investigations took place, lots of theories came out. Different doctors had their views. And as I mentioned in the paper, who will solve the mystery? Will it be the reporters? Will it be the police? Will it be the doctors who all seem so sure that they know what caused this? Finally, the landlord, whose name was Montgomery, recovered. He was taken very, very badly with the poisoning. He was asked about some insect powder that he had kept around the cable house in an old pepper box. And then the newspapers had a field day with, well, that must have been arsenic in the pepperbox, and this is an accidental poisoning of some kind. And that eventually was disproved, and it made good copy for a day or so. But what they did find out as time went on, and you can follow the course of the investigations as the days go on, and I'm going to put these up, as well as a picture of the cable house on the site here, as well as our website, as I'd like to explore this a little more, and I think you can probably tell where this is going. This is nothing, I think, that has not been thought of before. This case at Salisbury Beach and the Borden case, I understand it has popped up once or twice. I hadn't seen it, but I've been told, on private forums. And I can see why, because if you're following the newspapers from the period about the Borden case, you're going to see side by side the cable house and a lot of the same people involved, including Moulton Batchelder. And you'll remember him. He was in charge of seeing if Lizzie was insane or not. So he's also involved, as well as Moody and Dr. Wood and the Harvard Medical School. So we scotched the idea of the bluefish, and now we're moving on to something called Paris green. And many of you probably know Paris green contains arsenic, that's used as a pesticide sometimes, and sometimes in the dyeing process of dyeing clothing, in wallpaper, and it probably killed many people who didn't know why they died, as it was not known. Um, the landlord, Montgomery, thought perhaps the Paris green had been used as an insecticide on potato vines, and somehow that had transferred to string beans. For years, I called this the arsenic and the green bean murder mystery, until I discovered it turns out, after comparing the different food that people ate, it appears to be supper time for the boarders where this happened, because they had served meals to other people that day who were not ill. It appears to have been in the tea. And as in the Borden investigation, the collection of evidence wasn't everything it should have been. It's kind of shoddy work. If anyone had bothered, to test samples from some of the victims, it would have been pretty obvious. One of the doctors explains that that particular substance in tea would separate, and I guess those who had a cup of tea that was deeper in the pot would have been exposed to more of the poison. That could account for why some were much sicker than others, and 5 of them died. I did make a visit to the cemetery to see some of the victims, and I'll be posting pictures from that as well. Now, Lizzie, yes, she would indeed have been reading about this. At one point, one of the doctors thought perhaps there was something wrong with the milk and they should test the milk. You've heard that. In the Borden case, that comes up as well. He even mentions cases where cream cakes have spoiled. This is in the newspaper. And you'll remember the first thing Abby Borden says to Dr. Bowen on the morning of August 3rd. I think we're poisoned. It might be the baker's bread. I've known someone who got very ill from eating cream cakes in summer. So all of these things, there are a lot of little bells that go off. Yes, this sounds very familiar to me. And the coverage will continue. There were several theories on who the poisoner might be. Finally, they decided, and I will go more into this in an article. I realize this is getting a little longer than I thought. We're into 13 minutes. But there was a spurned lover and a will involved. Lots of different suspects, and those are eliminated one by one. Finally, the case, they can't prove anything. It's closed. So by late fall, the case is closed. More evidence turns up, and the case is reopened in the spring of 1893, just before Lizzie is getting ready to go to trial in June. And it has been proven through new evidence it was deliberate poisoning with a certain person in mind who survived the ordeal, and it was actually 2 people who had planned this deliberate poisoning. So there'll be more online about the Cable House Salisbury Beach murder. I think you'll find it very interesting. For a hot summer day, it was sure juicy reading for a young lady, perhaps from Fall River, staying at a boarding house with a newspaper and following all of this. And I don't think I need to say too much more about it, other than it's good reading. I'll be posting some of the newspaper clips as well, And I think as you go through, certain ideas might occur to you. Could be a great coincidence. It could be a great coincidence this happens, and then the 26th, Lizzie goes back to Fall River, and then we start hearing about poisoning. And Lizzie's talk with Alice Russell the night before the murders. So be looking out for that. I will be posting here and also on our website with more images. And don't forget, on Sunday, this coming Sunday, the 31st of July, Kimber and I will have another episode of Tea and Murder. This time it will be a Zoom. I'll be posting the link to the Zoom, and this time it is for our viewers. So we'll be chatting over lots of things and the results of the polls. A new poll will be going up tomorrow. I hope you take a moment and take the poll. The results have been very interesting. Sometimes quite surprising, and also the comments that have come with the poll. So as we get ready to go into Murder Week, lots to think about. I will be in Fall River on August 3rd through the 5th. I hope to see some of you, and I'll be doing a lot of live streaming and a few things for the viewers to participate in. Looking forward to that. So stay tuned, and we'll see you online.